सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So some verses from the Bhagavad Gita for intelligent living is the topic of this satsang and also the next satsang, because we may not be able to cover everything right here. So 2 satsangs we will have, and then if we find out that we need to become more intelligent, we can continue perhaps for 1 or 2 more depending on how it is unfolding. Of course, this is, even though the topics would be related, it will be discrete, as well, so that people don't feel like, oh, I didn't attend the last one, so I may not be able to catch up. No such thing. Each thing will talk about a particular aspect of intelligent living. And to begin with, first of all, we have to decide what is intelligent living. Before that, we have to decide what is living, period. What is it? What is it to live? In other words, what is the purpose of life? This is the question that I get asked a lot, and Pujya Swamiji used to get asked a lot. What is the purpose of life? Many people would say, I'll go to him and ask him. And then recently I was interviewed by some Life magazine or something like that. And there also they just had, few questions. And one of the questions was what is the purpose? What is living? And, this is a question that is very simple and yet very, very profound. What is the purpose of life? If one were to be asked that, the only thing to say is that the purpose of life is to live. Oh, that's the purpose. Thankfully, in our tradition, we don't have this focus on afterlife. In certain cultures and in certain, religions, the afterlife takes precedence over living. So much so that one is always focused on the afterlife. And that, makes such theologies, in my view, make it very, very difficult to be here, to be in the here and in the now. It's not possible because one is always focused on afterlife. In fact, the Veda also has a concept of afterlife. We have Svarga, we have the other, which is called heaven. We have Naraka, the opposite of heaven, which is hell. So, Veda was perhaps the first book to talk about afterlife. The most ancient book anyway, to talk about the afterlife. And the Veda talks about afterlife, and the Veda says, this is how it is. The heaven, for example, it paints a wonderful picture of heaven in the afterlife. For instance, there's lots of music concerts. And what else? There are no core issues in heaven. You never need a therapist. There are no core issues at all. You don't have anything to resolve. Isn't that wonderful? Because all the core issues are held in abeyance. Okay? And then what? Then you don't have also body issues, because the body that has gone to heaven is not the body that, is not the groaning, moaning, complaining body that you carry around. Like some piece of road kill. It's not, this is not the body you're taking. You're taking some other subtle body, which when it enters heaven is free of death. Like Lord Yama cannot enter there when you are there, as long as you are there. And then what else? What else is there about heaven? Yes, and you won't have any body issues, no overeating. In fact, no digestive problems because you don't eat at all. You become like the devas, you become paroksha priyaha, meaning you know, just like you take your laddus to Ganesh ji, Ganapati, and you go like this, pranaya swaha, panaya swaha, vyanaya swaha, and then and Ganesh ji is very happy. You just keep on going like this, and then and all the laddus, and you are also happy. It's a win-win situation because you really wanted to eat the laddus. Laddus, if you don't know what they are just a ball of calories. Okay, yeah. So that is what is the definition of a laddu. So then the laddu is offered to Ganesha. It remains there for you, and Ganesha is also satisfied. You are also satisfied. So likewise in heaven, you just the cooking, the elaborate cooking is done magically, and you just inhale the food. Literally, not figuratively. You inhale the food and you are satisfied. So we have accounts like this about heaven, and then there is music, there is dance, there is all kinds of entertainment. But for us, it's not a permanent abode. How can it be permanent? It cannot be permanent if it is outside of you. Simple logic. We have to see this. Simple logic. If anything is outside of you, it cannot be permanent. Because you delimit it, it delimits you, it cannot be limitless, it cannot be permanent. So from heaven you get the boot as soon as the punya is expended, you are back, like what? Like a coin, a counterfeit coin in circulation, the jiva is back. and and so what? So therefore we don't focus on the afterlife because that's not where the permanence lies. The afterlife is also an extension of the impermanence that you find in the entire Jagat. So this is something to think about, and this is something to understand. This is something to, what is the word for it? Assimilate. More about that later. So then, so what is the purpose of life? So the purpose of life is to inhabit this world. That is the first purpose of life. Because you don't have a choice. You have to live. Well, some people say, well, suicide is an option. Yes, but if you are a Vaidika, if you are an adherent of the Hindu Dharma, then the suicide again, what does it do? It takes you to some loka from where you will come back. It's just at best a temporary reprieve. It is not something which is again everlasting. And so therefore, if one is incarnated in this world, one finds oneself, what is that, with certain relationships, interacting with things, interacting with people. That is the purpose of life. You are here, you are here. You don't have to find some huge purpose and pressure yourself in the process. Oh, I have to become the most famous singer and the most famous dancer. I have to be really good at what I do, and I have to do this, I have to gain this. This is all putting lot of pressure. From the standpoint of Vedanta, live your life. Do what you have to do. This is what is living. The purpose of life is to do what you have to do. But how do I know what I have to do? Well, that's also very simple. Look around. What is there to do for you? If if you have a child, you have to raise it. You can't give it to the wolves, to be raised. And if you are married, you have a spouse, there are certain duties, and there are certain duties towards the family, towards the community, towards the nation. towards the neighborhood, whatever it is, towards your friends, towards your relatives. That's all what is, this is all what is the intricacies of living. So the purpose of life is to simply live, fully live. And then what is this, you might ask, what is this word intelligent that is put in there? So what is this intelligent living? Living means, okay, I understand, I have to do what I have to do. Intelligent living means the purpose of life is to live without hurting others, at least intentionally, and equally importantly, without hurting oneself. This is very, very, very important. This is what we call intelligent living. If one is able to do this, then one has it made. One has it made. Nothing more is needed, because that is where the satisfaction is. That is where the feeling of self, accomplishment is. That I'm living a life without hurting myself and without rubbing others in the process. I don't rub others and I don't get rubbed. This is what is intelligent living. And this is at least one definition of intelligent living. But then when we look at life and when we look at this definition of the purpose of life, it is not something that is very easy to accomplish. And the question is, why? We don't have to go much further beyond, what's his name? Our protagonist of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna. Arjuna was a very intelligent person and he was the commander-in-chief of this huge army. He had everything going for him. He was ambidextrous, could shoot off arrows with the left hand and right hand and everything. He was very skilled in what he did. And yet he found himself confused about life. He found himself wanting to run away and go to the forest, which is, how Swamis are born. This is how suddenly you get this impetus. Suddenly you get this pull. I'm off. I'm taking off. Why? Because we have a nice saying in English. When the going gets tough, ... what happens? The tough get going. And this is what Arjuna did. Arjuna, thought in his mind, here is Drona, another confused entity. But we are not doing archetypes of the Mahabharata this time. So that can be for some other satsang topic. And, here is Drona, supposed to be a teacher, but he is, teaching all wrong things. He's on the wrong side of dharma. And then there is, what's his name, Duryodhana, sociopath, psychopath, Dushasana, Duryodhana. No emotions, no abilities to just be able to live harmoniously. That harmonious living is not there. In fact, their purpose is to create disharmony. And then like this, Shakuni. Shakuni means good luck, but actually he was bad luck, bad news. He should have been named Apa Shakuni, bad news, bad luck. Good luck for whom? I don't know, perhaps for himself, but he was actually bad luck. And so here were all these people. These, even though they were terribly dysfunctional, they were related to Arjuna. In fact, he thought that they were his group, his primary contacts. And he is supposed to live, and he is supposed to live without hurting them. That's that part he got. But then he could not hurt them, because here they were face to face, in a war that could not be warded off, even though Bhagavan Krishna himself went. Bhagavan Krishna went as the mediator for this war and came back empty handed. Totally came back empty handed because he was not able to, he was not able to um, negotiate any kind of peace. He was not able to do that. He tried, even Bhagavan was not able to do that. But if you say then maybe Bhagavan is not, strong enough or powerful enough, that would be a misreading of the understanding of Ishvara according to Vedanta. Bhagavan cannot go against your prarabdha because your prarabdha is also Bhagavan. So Bhagavan cannot go against himself. This is a very, very important thing to assimilate. Bhagavan cannot go against your prarabdha. What is your prarabdha? Your karma. And prabala prarabdha, strong karma, unrelenting and strong karma, Bhagavan cannot go against. And you know why? Because that karma, that law of karma which is unfolding in your life is not a mandate of Bhagavan but a manifestation of Bhagavan. So Bhagavan cannot go against himself basically. This is something very, very important to understand. And so that's why Bhagavan came back without having been able to negotiate peace, because war was the only way they could come out of this situation. And if intelligent living means living in harmony with oneself and others, here Arjuna is not fulfilling either of those definitions of intelligent living. He is not. And so therefore what? So therefore he is in a quandary, he is confused, and like I said, when the going gets tough, what happens? The tough get going. And he also wanted to get going. He wanted to say, this is not for me. This is something which we need to overcome, which we need to not, be in this. This is not for me. I have to live intelligently, and I'm not for this war. Conflict nobody likes, Forget war. Even conflict people don't like. It's very difficult to confront anyone, especially people so closely connected to you. So he only understood one part, and he wanted to go to the forest and become a sannyasi. And there he had some little bit of a wisdom, because he saw around that there was no other way out for him. Being the commander-in-chief, he would have been charged with dereliction of duty had he just dropped the war, because you cannot sign up for the war and then say, I'm out of here. That is called dereliction of duty. It's an offense. Even now in the military, or if Air Force, etc., if you just leave like that, this is what it is. You're charged with that. Then what? So he could not leave. But in the Hindu Dharma, there is one way, there is an out that is given. A Houdini clause. You can get out of the bounds of these roles, of of negotiating these ways of harmonious living in impossible situation. So what is the Houdini clause? The Houdini clause is that any time Yat aharam vrajet, tat aharam eva pravrajet. To put it in Adi Shankara's words, the day you feel like dropping everything and going, that you don't wait for the next day. That is the day you can drop everything and go. And Arjuna thought, aha, very nice out here, very nice option. And I will grow a lamba dadi, long beard. And then I'll go to walk to Rishikesh, because I can go to Rishikesh. It's, from Kurukshetra, one day's what is that, Padayatra, I can go. I can go sit under a tree. I can meditate. I can beg for my alms. And this kind of a life is better than this conflict that I'm about to enter, that I know not how to negotiate, that I know not how to reconcile my love and my respect towards the elders, towards my cousin brothers, towards the uncles, and all the people who are elder to me, who I play, in whose laps I have played, and all these younger fellows, nephews, etc., who are younger to me, who have played in my lap. There is no other way of, of not hurting them, of not dealing with them, except to take on orange vastras and then go and sit under a tree in Haridwar, whatever it is. And Lord Krishna had other plans for him. Lord Krishna just showed him a little scenario of what it was going to look like with him sitting under a tree in Haridwar or Rishikesh. Him meaning Arjuna. And Lord Krishna said, two things are going to happen. First is you will not be able to live with yourself. Because this unfought war and this unfinished business nobody likes. And you are such a warrior, you're such a brave warrior, and you will not like this at all. And you will be the first one to have a lot of regret. You will be able to run away from the battlefield, no doubt. That is easily accomplished. But Arjuna, will you be able to live with yourself? Because you cannot run away from yourself. You cannot run away from this mad mind. That's not going to let you sit in peace. You cannot run away from your thoughts. You cannot run away from your regrets. You cannot run away from your hurt, your guilt. What are you going to do? No, wherever you go, there you are. That's the first thing that's going to happen. And second thing is, you cannot avoid people who come to Haridwar. You may be sitting under a tree with your, what is that, Bhiksha Patram, your vessel, begging vessel outstretched. Okay, they'll put some rice in it, they'll put some money in it, whatever it is. And then they will look closely in your eye and then say, are you that Arjuna who left the battlefield? And you will have no other option but to nod your head, hang your head in shame. Avachya vadamscha bahun pravadanti tava ahitaha nindantas samarthyam tato dukkha. And he says, Lord Krishna puts it very beautifully. They will curse you with four-letter words that I, as Bhagavan, am too polite to say. This is what is called avachya, things which I cannot even repeat. I have to censor myself, but they are not going to censor themselves. They are going to repeat all kinds of four-letter choice Sanskrit four-letter words that they will repeat. Ahitaha, people who hate your guts, people who have disapproved of your actions, people who know that you've not done the right thing. And then what will they do? Nindantaha. Nindanta. Nindanti means they will denigrate you. They will censure you. They will critique you. Tava samarthyam, they will critique your ability or lack thereof. They will say you have the God-given gift of warfare, you were made the commander-in-chief. What did you do? You went and, did some bhajans under a tree. Shame on you. What's wrong with you? Not that it's wrong to sit under a tree and do bhajans. That's not the point. The point is, you took refuge in this lifestyle, not out of a growing sense of the desire for knowledge or the desire to know Bhagavan or the desire to look for Bhagavan within yourself. But you took to this life as a convenient way, Houdini, of escaping the situation. You took an easy out, Arjuna. And this you're not going to be forgiven. Not by this generation of your contemporaries, and you will be a historical figure. A negative archetype like Kaikeyi. Kaikeyi means what? This lady who basically sent Rama to the forest. Everybody knows. And how old is the Ramayana? It's from another yuga. Still, no person in India or anywhere names their daughter Kaikeyi. So much of a negative archetype. And likewise, you will not hear anybody naming their son Duryodhana, Dushasana. Not possible, because they have become historical villains. Putana, the one that was trying to, suck the lifeblood out of Krishna, but then the opposite happened. Shurpanakha. No one names their daughters or their sons by this. So you will become a negative archetype. And not only your contemporaries, but children of the next generation. Thousands and thousands of years hence, even in the next yuga, you will be critiqued, blamed for your action. That much is the ripple effect of your action today. Were you to take this, and that is when there is when all the doors close, what happens? The door to Vedanta opens. Why? Because all the doors closing means what? The door to pravritti. Pravritti means things that I want right now, things that I want to accomplish, things that I want to have, things that I want to, things that I want to work towards not having. That is also a kind of a pravritti only. Keeping at bay what I don't want. All these are various examples of pravritti. We take the meaning of pravritti very, very narrowly and think that it is just something to be accomplished. It's not just something to be accomplished. It's to ward off things that I don't want. It's all my agenda. It's all the things that I want. I want this, I want that, I want this with relation to my children, with relation to my spouse, with relation to my life, with relation to my neighbors. Wherever you look, there are certain plans. There is a certain agenda. All this one wants. This is pravritti. And this is what? Pravritti is what interferes in life, in living intelligently. This is what causes disharmony with others around you and with yourself. So that there is a Kurukshetra not only outside, but there is a Kurukshetra within. Dharma and adharma are fighting for a stronghold. The Dushasanas are within, the Duryodhanas are within, Shakuni is within, Drona, the confused fellow, who had a hubris, some kind of a narcissistic fellow. Drona was sadistic also. Look at what he did to Ekalavya. Some kind of a, confused sadistic fellow, egoistic. And that is also within. And so the battleground is not just Kurukshetra, it is a Dharma Kshetra, because what is being the stakes here that are being fought is none other than Dharma and Adharma. That is what when you bring in pravritti, or you don't bring it in, you notice it is there. So when pravritti is brought into the picture, that is when it creates a rub to an otherwise very simple statement. Pujya Swamiji's definition of intelligent living, or just living per se, is what? Living harmoniously with everything that is there, without getting into a rub with them, without harming them, or without harming yourself in the process. So the curved ball, the monkey wrench is because of pravritti. Pravritti means one's own agenda where raga dveshas are included. I have free will, I can achieve things, and unfortunately, when in the process of achieving things, what happens? Other people also want to achieve the same things. Point number one. Or point number two, I want to achieve a few things, but my karma is standing in the way. I don't get the results of my action. The neighbor seems to be getting the results of my action. This is another problem. And so like this, pravritti comes in the way. And so all the doors start to close, like for Arjuna. He really did not have an option, or so he thought. There is no other option. I have to, Guru Nahatva hi Mahanubhava. And he says, without killing gurus and other elders. Bhaiksham, ihaloke, to live a life of alms is better, he says. And he says, I'm confused. And he says, I'm sad. And the sadness is why? Because my agenda is fighting with somebody else's agenda in this world. What I have to do, I don't want to do. What I want to do, I cannot do. And what the other person wants to do, they seem to be able to do. And that is directed against me. And I have no other option except to become a ninja. What is that? What is the full title? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, yeah. So, teenage means what? Like inner children. Screaming, yelling, not grown up, mutant. Stuck in a certain trajectory of growth. Stuck. Immature. Ninja, defensive and offensive. All they had was various yantras they used to fling at others. These turtles. Turtle also nice, long lived like the jiva. Keeps on living, and turtle scared goes and hides at the slightest provocation, is in a dome of denial. This is the situation of the jiva. And so we are very far away from intelligent living. How are we going to do this? This pravritti has come and put a curved the whole situation, put a curved ball. Because what I want to do, I cannot do. What I have to do, I do not want to do. Do not wish to do. But then, that is made even worse by looking around me and seeing what the other person wants to do. They seem to be able to get it. And what the other person wants to do is crowding what I want to do. And crowding my life, strangulating me. Fortunately for Arjuna, he recognized that everything was closing in. This is before the Houdini trick. Houdini was a famous magician. And on the stage, he would go inside one box and sit, and the box would be locked up. But before he sat in the box, he was all locked up. His hands were tied behind him. Tied means what? With chains and locks. His legs were tied behind, together with chains and locks. And sometimes the hands and the legs were tied. He was in a little kind of a fetal position. And then they would throw him in a box. And that was locked up and tied with chains. And that box was put in another box, like this 3-4 boxes. And then the final box was put in water. And all the audience is watching this. And no oxygen, nothing he has taken. This Houdini. And then what? Then the big water thing is there, tank, and this box is let into the water, suspended completely, drowned in the water. And then the curtain is put, and then some music is played so that the audience can be distracted, and after a while they see somebody running through the audience, the aisles of the people sitting there. It is none other than Houdini. He runs, he climbs, comes on the stage. Everybody goes crazy. They clap. How did you escape? Nobody knows how he escaped. And then they would open the box, and then another box and another box and another box. No Houdini, because Houdini is standing in front of you. Somehow he would escape. And in a way, you know, Vedanta is that escape. Nivrityatmakam Shastram. This is what it is. This is not a Pravritti Shastra. This is a Nivritti Shastra. What is Nivritti? Opposite of Pravritti. Pravritti means approach. Pravritti means gimme, gimme, gimme. Pravritti means I have to be here in the front center and I want to achieve things, and I want to be a go-getter. I'm a karta, I'm a bhokta, I'm a pramata, I'm this, I'm that, me, I. And that's where the bondage is. Like Houdini, one is tied up, one is drowned, glub, 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 glub. But then, the last portion of the Veda known as Vedanta, Upanishads, and of which the Bhagavad Gita is, where the Bhagavad Gita is also included, it is called the Gita-Upanishad, is a very important part. Very important part. And because of this, what happens? One is able to come out of the shackles of do worship, the shackles of pravritti, the shackles of I want, the shackles of raga, the box of dvesha. All these things one is miraculously, without needing to cut the cord and cut those chains, one is already out. Nivrityatmakam Shastram. Nivrityatmaka. Nivritti means that which releases, that which takes you out. Of what? Out of this entanglement, thinking that I have to, that I'm caught in this quandary of not being able to live my life freely, without impinging upon the rights of others, and without in turn being impinged in the process. I'm stepping on toes and other people are stepping on my toes. Very soon there are blisters everywhere and I don't know how to walk, I don't know how to talk, I don't know what to do, and then that is the bondage. Thankfully, it is not an ocean of bondage, it's a notion of bondage. It's not an ocean of samsara, it is a notion of samsara. That's how you are able to escape, while leaving the box for everybody to see. This is the beauty. Nivrityatmaka, the Shastra. That's why the verse that we are going to look at today is the first verse in the Bhagavad Gita, which is where the teaching begins. Ashocyananvashocastvam prajñāvādāṃśca bhāṣase gatasu nagatasumsca nānya gatasu nagatasumsca nānuṣochanti panditaha na anuṣochanti panditaha. Very beautiful verse. And it's the first verse where the teaching begins. And very interestingly, with the negative particle. We don't begin anything with a negative particle, which is a. And Adi Shankara gives a whole page of commentary for this one, not even word, a negative, nanj pratyaya, a negative prefix a. Shoka, sorrow. Shocyaha means that which is worth grieving over. Ashocyaha, that which is not worth grieving over. Ashocyaha na shoka yogyaha ashocyaha. So what is this here? The teaching begins with the negative particle a, which generally is Ashubha. Ashubha means not very auspicious to begin with something negative, because Vedanta Shastra has to be positive. It has to tell me my Swarupa, it has to tell me how to live, it has to tell me how to live intelligently, and it has to tell me how to not come into the place of, having some kind of a conflict with others or with myself. It has to tell me all these things. But here it is not telling me anything, it is telling me Ashocyan Anvashocastvam. Ashocyan. You, Arjuna, this is the Lord speaking. You, Arjuna, are grieving over something that doesn't require grief, that is not worthy of grief. So this is a very big statement. And if you go to your friend's house and find them crying, and if you tell them, you know what, you are crying over nothing, then they will no longer be your friend, right? You cannot do that in an interpersonal relationship. But Krishna can do that. You know why? Because Lord Krishna here is been chosen by Arjuna as a teacher. Lord Krishna is not a friend, he is a teacher. And a teacher can get away with it because the teaching is beginning here. And that's the difference. So it begins, the whole teaching in Vedanta Shastra itself, the teaching begins with a negative particle. Ashocya, Nashochya. It begins with a negative particle because the Shastra is Nivrityatmaka. Nivrityatmaka means it is focused on retreating from the situation that is already tense, from where you have no other way forward. Where else will you go? You cannot go out. You cannot, because it is all surrounded with all kinds of things. The only place to go is within. This is Nivritti. The only place, the only choice is to go within. And that is the escape. That is how to come out. That is how, that is what is called doing a Houdini. This is what it is. And so it appropriately begins with the negative particle, because it shows that the Bhagavad Gita is not a karma shastra, it's not a pravrityatmakam shastram. Meaning it is not asking you to do karma. This is actually a very big misunderstanding about the Bhagavad Gita. It's not asking you to do karma at all. It is not telling you anything to, it's not saying do this, do that. No, it is saying, because in the second chapter, Tasmad Yuddhaya Yujyasva. Therefore, O Arjuna, get up and fight, get up and fight, get up and fight. Come on, get up, get up, get up. Who is telling that? Well, Lord Krishna is telling that. Then how do you say that it is not something that is prayukta? It is not something that is impelling one towards action. It is not impelling. Arjuna is not being impelled to act. Arjuna is being told that this is not the time to retreat, because what you want to do, you cannot do. That is the teaching here. The teaching is not having, the Bhagavad Gita has no truck to make one into an actor. The purport of the Bhagavad Gita is to refine and define the nature of action as a prelude or a precursor to self-knowledge. As a prelude to self-knowledge, as a preparation for self-knowledge. The Bhagavad Gita has no truck, has no agenda to make you into an actor. The Bhagavad Gita is refining your actions so that it is freed of the shackles of pravritti. That is why it is appropriate for us also to start this series of on intelligent living, verses from the Bhagavad Gita for intelligent living, with a negative particle ashochya. The other reason why the negative particle is used is to show that 9/10 of the operation of Vedanta Shastra as a pramana is to remove misunderstandings centered on the I. It's to remove the misunderstanding. And this removal is ajnana nivritti. Ajnana nivritti, samsara nivritti. Ajnana nivritti is samsara nivritti. There's no other, no other escape, no other freedom. Nivritti means freedom. So what is the freedom here? Ajnana nivritti. It's removing the ignorance centered on the self. And did Arjuna have self-ignorance? Oh boy, definitely. Definitely he had self-ignorance. Because you can see how he talked. He talked a lot in the first chapter. He talked about the dismantling of he talked about the effects of war. He talked about the dismantling of the social, setup. He talked about the widowing of all women. He talked about the imbalance of the gender ratio. And he talked about how if women are left alone without protection, then foreign forces will come and we will lose our sovereignty. There will be attacks, there will be all these things he talked about. Prajna Vadamscha Bhashase. Even though Lord Krishna did not say a word in the first chapter, he did not interrupt him even once. He remembered everything that was said. And he said, you talk like a Pandit. You talk Prajna Vadamscha Bhashase. You seem to talk a lot of sense. Looks like you've read a lot of Dharma Shastra, but then you are in the midst of a big Dharma Sankata. Sankata means what? A lot of conflict. You're in the midst of a conflict, Dharma conflict, and then yet you're talking you're talking like a Pandit. You're talking like a big fellow who knows a lot, and then you continue to grieve over that which does not deserve grief. There is a contradiction. In other words, you know the talk, but you're not walking the talk, Arjuna. There is a gap. And that gap is what I am pointing out. And that gap shows that you need to do Shravanam. And therefore, sit and listen here. Listen to what I'm saying. Ashocyan anvashochastvam. And the crux, he doesn't, beat around the bush. He comes straight to the point, which is the beauty of Vedanta Shastra. If you read the Upanishads also, it is the same. It doesn't say, perhaps, you might be sad because you might be just grieving over something, and what do you think? What do you think is making you sad? Oh yeah, no such thing. Upanishad is a lady of few words. And the Bhagavad Gita also begins with a big bang of self-knowledge. The teaching of self-knowledge is not, it doesn't have frills attached. There can be akhyayika stories, there can be certain kinds of things that one can engage in, some anecdotes, some stories, some prelude. That's just so that, shrotra buddhi prarochanartham, so that, the people are engaged. But the teaching goes straight to the point, straight to the heart. It pierces the heart. Apramattena, without making a mistake, it pierces the heart. And, infallibly, the teaching touches the heart. And here, this is a teaching that is coming right in the beginning. It's not sugar coated, and therefore it is a little hard to swallow, to be told that, because it is Tvam, not just Arjuna. Ashocyan anvashochas Tvam. So anybody who's reading the Gita here is Tvam, you. Just like Tattvam Asi, that you are that which is one with the cause of the universe. And here, you, anyone, you who, anyone, whoever you are, you are grieving. This is why you cannot live in harmony with yourself and with the whole set. As it is, because you grieve over something. You're aggrieved over that which does not deserve grief. And then he says, you pragyavadamscha bhashase. You are talking like a pandit. But you are not really a pandit, Arjuna. Pandita means what? Pandaha asya asti iti panditaha. Panda means self-knowledge. The one who has self-knowledge is called pandita. And you are not a pandita by any stretch of the imagination. You are in the thicket of self-ignorance. You are lost in the forest of self-ignorance. You are wandering in the forest of self-ignorance. You are lost. You don't even know your way out. And yet you talk like a pandit. There is a big gap between your presentation of self and what you really are, and what you know. You act as though you know, but you don't really know the basic stuff. And what is the basic stuff? Na anushochanti panditaha. The basic stuff is that the person of self-knowledge is free of sorrow. Is free of sorrow. That is the basic stuff. And here you are crying in the chariot. In fact, there is a little flood where you are sitting. All your tears. And your whole armor is rusty because you have cried so much. All the iron, now I'll have to sit and oil before I send you to fight. Your armor is rusty. You are full of grief. And what is the grief over? And the grief is over all these tall words you are standing against. And, he has a certain logic there, Arjuna. And he says, Nakakshe Vijayam Krishna, I don't want victory. Boo-hoo. He's crying. Nakakshe Vijayam Krishna. And then why do I want Vijayam? In order to be able to get the Rajya kingdom. Na Rajyam. I don't want Rajya. And why do I want Rajyam? In order to be happy. Na Sukhanicha. I don't want happiness. Why? Kinno Rajyena Govinda. What to do with the happiness? What to do with what to do with the kingdom? Yeshamarthe, for whose sake we were going to enjoy the kingdom, with whom? If they are all killed, what will I do with this kingdom? It's like building a dream house. This used to be the big thing in America. Everybody building a very big dream house in the hope that the grandchildren will never come, will come. And then the grandchildren never came because they were never born, okay? And the grandchildren were not born because the children never got married. They are all modern. And so this is the whole kind of a situation. And this is what is Arjuna is caught in this kind of a trap. And so he is being told here, you're talking like a pandit. But the pandits, simply speaking, they don't grieve. They don't have grief, and they don't have this convoluted logic. Your logic is so convoluted, Arjuna. You say, I don't want victory. Oh, so you want defeat? No, that's not the point. I don't want victory because I don't want the kingdom. I don't want kingdom because I cannot be happy. And why can't you be happy? Because the kingdom which I am going to enjoy after all these people are killed, I wanted to enjoy with them. This is a dysfunctional relationship. Arjuna, in fact, has some mild version of what is called Stockholm Syndrome. Really? Stockholm syndrome, means it is an expression taken from the 60s or 70s, one bank robbery in Sweden, and then there the robber took some people hostage at gunpoint. And then finally, the hostage situation was diffused, and these 5, 6 people were 7 people, I think, they were rescued. And the funny thing was, they didn't want to be rescued. They wanted to be with him, and they were pleading on his behalf of his life, don't kill him, he's not a bad man. So, some psychological process because of the trauma of being trapped with the abuser. This is what Arjuna is displaying. They are displaying the trauma of being trapped with the abuser is giving him some kind of a. It is another word for Stockholm syndrome is trauma bonding. Because look at his logic. येषाम् अर्थे काङ्क्षितं नः राज्यं भोगा सुखानि च तैरिमेव स्थिता युद्धे प्राणं त्यक्त्वा धनानि च. For whose sake we wanted this kingdom, for whose sake we wanted this victory, for whose sake we wanted this happiness. They are all standing there as good as dead, because once I'm done with this war, they will be dead. He knows that. And so, this is an opening for Lord Krishna to say, this is not how Pandits talk. You seem to be philosophizing, but your philosophy is not really philosophy. It is all fluffy philosophy. It is just a lip service to philosophy. It is not really Vedanta. What is really a Pandita Lakshana? What is really the Lakshana of the first and foremost Lakshana of a person who has gained the knowledge that the Bhagavad Gita teaches is that they are free of sorrow, within and without. They don't have any problem with how the world is. And yes, there may be some injustice, yes, there may be some difficulties, and they'll do whatever they can to help it out. But they do it from a place of objectivity, not a subjective pravritti agenda. This is what has to be understood. They don't have a truck with the world. They don't have a truck with the people in the world. And they have no grief whatsoever. Grief with regard to what? And again here, the master stroke of Lord Krishna we can see. Gatasu and Agatasu. Asu means breath. Gatasu means from whom the breath has departed. Who are those people from whom the breath has departed? Who are such people? People who are not breathing. Who are people who are not breathing? Yeah. Don't say they are yogis, okay? Yeah, we are not talking of that. Yogis also come out and breathe once a day or whatever it is. So here we are talking of people who have stopped breathing. And then Agatasu means those from whom the breath has not yet departed. This is Bhagavan Krishna's definition of people who are alive, meaning yet one day the breath will stop coming. Because how do you know when is the last breath? The only way you know is, you don't, the surroundings don't seem familiar to you, you are in a different place. But then when you breathe, you know that the previous breath was not the last breath. That's how you know. But here it is, the whole world of people has been divided into two by Arjuna. First are dead people, and second are people who are yet to die. And he takes this extreme example because of the prakritam situation, the contextual situation of this traumatic war, which is of course going to lead to death. And death is the reason why the example of death is taken is because death is got a finality from which there is no coming back. So there is misery, there is sorrow. around many things in the universe, but the most sorrow is there around death. Most sorrow. And so, therefore, he takes this extreme example to bring home this point that there is no grief with regard to the living or with regard to the death, with regard to the dead, where the Panditas are concerned. And so, what does this mean? I mean, we can look at this verse from two different standpoints. One is from the relative standpoint of just being a pragmatic person in the universe. If we take death or any kind of ending, it cannot be avoided. Sureshwaracharya, the student of Adi Shankara, said, Sanyogantaha, Vyogantaha, Sanyogaha, Vyogantaha, Sanyogaha, all coming together lasts until it falls apart. Vyoga is separation. Samyoga is coming together. Any kind of a union results in separation. Any kind of life results in death. These are finalities. So from the standpoint of a pragmatic person, forget dharma, forget shastra, forget any other kind of Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita, etc. Forget all that. From the standpoint of a mere practical person, there are certain things which are unchangeable. And the one thing that is unchangeable is change itself. Change is there, and change is an unchangeable fact of life. Things are always changing, things are always morphing, that is unchangeable. And then what? Death is unchangeable. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityuhu dhruvam janma mritasya cha. So this is apariharya. This cannot be changed. Apariharya means there is no remedy for this. Things which are born have to die. Things which are dead will result in rebirth. Such is the chakra, the wheel of life, goes round and round. Death, birth, death, birth, birth, death, birth, death. However you put it, it is a circle. It's a circle of life. And then if we take, this is called Prathama Malla Nyaya. This is if you knock off if you want to be the champion, the village Pehelwan champion, of the village boxing champion, wrestling champion, you don't have to go beat up every street urchin. You just have to find out who is the reigning champion. And in this case, his name was Malla. And this Prathama Malla Nyaya means this Malla has to be knocked off. So the reigning champion, if you knock off, then you are the champion. And here, the death is in the form of the reigning champion. And that is why it is brought in, because if one is able to reconcile these teachings with regard to the most painful and the most difficult thing in life, which is death, because it has that finality and it is associated with missing the person and and misery, etc., then one has made it. Then all other difficulties are included in that. And so, gatasun, agatasunscha na anushocanti panditaha. So the first level is just from a standpoint of a viveki, the one who is an intelligent person. The intelligent person cognitively recognizes that nothing can be done. Death is final, and it is a situation in life that has to be confronted. Nothing at all can be done. This is how it is. This is how it is. And then what? Then what to do? Well, if this is how it is, then one has to come to terms with it. And Pujya Swamiji used to tell this very nice story of the grandma who lost the grandpa. Grandpa died, grandma was inconsolable, and then what? Crying, she got out of bed, crying, she put on the water, crying, she put the, she made fresh coffee, she put the milk, she put the sugar, Crying, crying, she drank it. Crying, crying, she then decided what to make for lunch. In other words, life goes on. Whether she's crying or not, the life is going on. So pragmatically speaking, this is a fact of life. And the sooner that one is able to have viveka, and viveka is intelligent living, this discrimination, the easier it is to get to the place of understanding this verse from a slightly uh, what is that, from a slightly spiritual standpoint, not just a pragmatic standpoint. From the spiritual standpoint, what do we see? Dvauhi padartha. In the world there are only two things. What are the two things? Everybody knows this. Atma, I, and then everything else which is called anatma, not I. So then we ask a question from the standpoint of Vedanta Shastra, where is the sorrow centered? Is the sorrow centered on I? Is the sorrow centered on Atma? Say no, so we can move on. Of course, it is not centered on Atma. Why? Because the Atma naturally is free of sorrow. It doesn't have to become free of sorrow. It is naturally free of strife, of fear. We know this. It is Satchidanandam Brahma. It is Ananda. If it is Ananda, it cannot also have little bit of sorrow and little bit of Ananda. It cannot have. It is all Ananda, so there is no place, no room for sorrow. So the sorrow is not centered on Atma. So that is, if this much is understood, then we can tackle this interesting paksha, the interesting possibility that perhaps it is centered on Anatma. And not at the first look, yes, it is centered on the world, that's why the world makes me sad. Not so fast, not so quick. Look deeply and look inside this statement, the world makes me sad, people in the world make me sad. Not true. One day you're in a good mood, for no reason perhaps. Maybe even a desire is not fulfilled, but you're in a good mood. And then you wake up feeling very benevolent towards the world. And then what happens? You are able to say, somebody cuts you off when you are speaking. You are able to say, no, please go ahead. You talk. If it had been any other day, you would have bitten their head off. But today, you especially if it's the significant other. But today you let them talk. Today you let them, give them the benefit of doubt. Today suddenly you are more trusting. Suddenly you are more loving. Suddenly you are more compassionate. All of a sudden. And then what happens in sleep? In sleep is the same world that you were blaming all day long as being the cause of your sorrow. In sleep, does it give you sorrow? You have to say no, because in sleep you are not sad. The world hasn't changed. Everything is the same. In sleep you are not sad. So therefore it cannot give you sorrow. And therefore what? So therefore there is a vyabhichara here, there is a contradiction here. That this sorrow is not centered on Atma, but it is also not centered on Anatma. Anatma is not making me sad. Atma is not making me sad. Where is this sorrow? It doesn't have a leg to stand on. It's like the cockroaches hiding somewhere in the house. And you've gone for one day and then you come back and then you let yourself in and switch the light and they just go scattering in various directions under the furniture. It is like that, never to be seen again. Unlike the cockroaches, never to be seen again. This sorrow, the concept of sorrow dissipates because it doesn't have a leg to stand on, and the word for things in Vedanta Shastra which do not have a leg to stand on is mithya. Mithya is gimpy. It doesn't have a leg to stand on. This is what it is. Mithya means it is a reality. It's an order of reality that is experienced, no doubt. It's an experiential, transactional reality, but it can be neither denied nor affirmed. It is in between that which is absolute. The view of the Pandit, there is nothing to grieve. Period. Get over it. It is in between the absolute. And it is not absolute. And it is not a figment of your imagination either. It is not pratibhasika, a figment of your imagination, a completely solipsistic subjective reality, and it is also not objective. It is somewhere hanging in between. This mithya is hanging like Trishanku. Trishanku was a sage, and he was going to heaven, but then Indra was jealous of him or something like that. Forget the whole story. And then he was sent down. And then somebody else wanted him to go up, so he was sent up. And then he was neither up nor down. So like this, Mithya is like Trishanku. It can neither be affirmed nor can be denied. Sorrow is Mithya because you cannot affirm sorrow. Because even the saddest person in sleep, they are very happy. That's why they don't want to wake up. They are Ananda, they are all Ananda. And so sorrow cannot be affirmed. But because it is experienced, it cannot be denied. And this in between, it is neither centered on Atma nor is it centered on Anatma, but because it is experienced by what? The manaha, the mind, the ahankara, the buddhi, etc. By the ahankara it is experienced, and so therefore we need this nivrityatmakam shastram, we need this shastra that removes not the sorrow but the notion that you can be subject to sadness. That is what is removed. That you are subject to sadness is totally removed. And this is how the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita begins. And if this one verse is assimilated, we go a long way to have intelligent living, both in the relative sense and also in the spiritual Vedantic sense. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.